So Matt, there's a lot of common, IT myths in the corporate world. What are some of your favorites? What are some of the ones you run into from a challenge day to day? Which ones are real? Which ones do you think are just completely myths?
Oh, I think some of them are related to the skill sets within IT, right? Everybody thinks everybody in IT is all the same, but they're really different. They're different skill sets. I think you've said it before. Like you have doctors, you have lawyers. There's different types of lawyers, different types of doctors for various different things. Everyone in IT is not the same.
Yeah. So what other corporate myths do you run into in the IT space? I know one of the ones I run into is, your CIO is your password genie. That's the place you should go for reporting an issue with everything from your AirWatch client or your MDM platform. You go to the CIO instead of the service desk, right? That's one of my challenges that I run into quite often.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. I think the reporting directly to the CIO is something that we do have to overcome. It's funny because I think that actually prolongs the resolution of the problem, right? Because what the CIO is going to do is then contact the VP, who's going to contact the director, who's going to contact his manager, who's going to then contact the service desk, right? So it all goes roundabout. It's kind of interesting on some of that. Why you think you're going to get an expedited process, but you're probably delaying and causing confusion across multiple different things.
Yeah, and you're delaying it in a lot of ways because it makes it hard for anyone to really figure out if there's a problem if it's not centrally tracked, right?
Yeah.
If it's one person impacted as opposed to 100. That's one of the challenges I've seen with it going to the CIO. Luckily with us, we have a CIO that has the technical acumen to address a lot of those issues, but often you'll see a CIO that really has a fine arts degree, may not have an IT background. They're really focused on the relationships with the business functions outside of IT, so it makes it, to your point, probably delays getting resolution to an issue.
What's interesting to me too is you turn a 10-minute, $10 problem expense resolution into some tens of thousands of dollars of labor and people spent involved in something that should be resolved relatively quickly.
Yeah, and then what I run into is, at least what I call it, is CLS, Chicken Little Syndrome, right? The sky is falling. One person has an issue as opposed to realizing it is just that one single person.
Carlos, don't you know by now, any issue is always a priority one issue. It doesn't matter.
Oh, that is a good myth.
That is a good myth. Everything's important, right?
That's true.
I mean, I'm sure when you're at home and you're on Verizon or AT&T, your cell phone never drops. Everything's completely clear. So do you call them every time? You should. I mean, that is very critical at that point in time.
Yeah, you're on a Skype for business call and quality is bad and you're at home. There's nothing that could be wrong with your network.
No, your home network.
Kids couldn't be out
perfect.
playing, like hosting a PlayStation party.
No.
And killing your wireless
You're
network.
not streaming Netflix or
No,
anything.
that never happens. And that never happens at work either.
Never. I mean, when you're at home, that's solid, secure.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know why you would think it would be your home network.
That's another myth. There's never inappropriate use of your corporate IT resources.
I remember one time it must have been my network because I support the network, right? It must have been my network because I was at home playing with the dog on a wireless headset, VPN'd into work, and I just don't know what was going on with our corporate network in that situation. So, because it couldn't have been my local ISP.
It's true. Or one of my favorites too was a couple of years ago that we both ran into where there was problems in the office in Florida, and it just continually kept happening. And then just randomly every 3 months we'd run into the issue. Oh, the network's bad, the network's slow. It turned out that somebody was burning a DVD for one of our clients over the wide area network from a file server in Arizona onto a laptop in Florida, which, I don't know why that didn't work.
I don't know. But if you remember correctly, we thought they were originally burning Lord of the Rings, but...
That's true. I'll give it to them now. That was client related.
That was client related, yeah. So what about the IT myth around more is always better? What do you think about that? Where does that apply?
It's a myth, right? I mean, would you rather have fewer good things or great things or more average things? One of the things we run into often is that, we are a reseller of a lot of technologies and solutions. So if we actually used all of them across our corporate landscape, that would make it easier for sales, make it easier for references, which is, I can see it to a point, but you get to a point of diminishing returns and you get to adding complexity in your environment. You really should be looking to simplify your IT environment, right? My Gumos simplify at the core right? And then you deviate from that where it makes sense. Does it really matter how many different ways we have to make a phone call, right? So I would rather have, one or two really great services that we provide to the business as opposed to a bunch of average ones or adding complexity with no clear purpose or business value.
So it's not so much about more, it's about what's right. So you're doing the evaluation of it's not about I need to have all this or this much more storage or this much more compute. It's what's actually necessary to accomplish the objective you're trying to get.
Right, and you don't want to have too many, you want to have competition in the market from a competitive standpoint, right? Be able to actually have a business, use a marketplace, right? Create a marketplace where you don't just have one vendor lock-in, for example. You want to have multiple solutions to the point where you can have competition, but if you have too much, then you run into the complexity of managing all those different solutions. That adds complexity, that drives up cost, and it drives up incidents as well. So I'd say, to your point, it's figuring out what's right.
And that's always think it's interesting too, right? All I hear is a lot is, I need more bandwidth, I need more bandwidth, I need more bandwidth.
That was last week.
That was last week.
Even relax, I asked for it last week, and where is it?
But you're only using 10% of what you had. I mean, the speed of light is the speed of light.
I am
last time I
predicting
checked.
in the future that the amount of data we're going to have is going to require that bandwidth.
Some point in the future, maybe.
Yeah, that's because we have the precogs, remember. That's also a corporate IT myth,
that
we
true.
can predict everything,
We
including
can't?
industry trends. Yeah, I mean,
We can't?
well, yeah, sure. We can predict anything. Even if you don't give me any requirements, I can pick the right tool just like that.
Oh, that's a good myth, that you don't need requirements.
That is
I
true.
mean, how many people come in and say, well, what is the application or what does the infrastructure do for me? Not, here's what I want to actually get done. I think that's actually probably really good.
Yeah, and if you apply that to regular life, the way I look at it is, if I have a home improvement project or something broken, I don't go to the toolbox first, right? And go, oh, wow, let me grab a hacksaw. And then I'm working on an electrical issue. I don't think that's the smart move.
Well, I kind of think of it too, as when I'm talking to my wife and, Friday night, where do you want to go to eat? I don't know, I'm just hungry. Ooh, that doesn't help me too much. Italian, Mexican, American.
True.
Why don't you just know what I want? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not going there.
That doesn't work in the workplace either?
Probably not.
No?
Would be my guess. Just off the top of my head, though.
One of the other ones we run into quite often, at least in the data center space, is always, cloud is better, right? Cloud is better, it's cheaper, it's the direction you should go, cloud first. What is your take on, cloud from a marketplace perspective? And
So yeah, there's a lot of discussion around cloud, right? When I think of cloud, I think it goes back to the evaluation. Where does it make sense and where doesn't? Does it make sense to have something on-prem? Does it make sense to have cloud? I think the myth is everything out on the cloud. Everything should be out on the cloud. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I think it's got to be, this makes sense to be in the cloud. There might be some core stuff that, I want some direct control over. Because once you put it in the cloud, it's really just the same stuff, but someone else has got more control over than you probably had originally. And in certain situations, that may or may not be what you want.
yeah, correct. We've done several evaluations, and you don't want to just base it off cost, right? If you're making every decision, even in your personal life, about cost, then sometimes you wind up making the wrong choice, right? There are times where you need to invest and justify the investment. But the other part of it is it's almost similar to like making a housing decision, right? If you're going to have an application, or if you're going to make, living in some place temporarily, you may want to rent, or even if you're on vacation, you're just going to do some Airbnb play or stay in a hotel. But does that make sense long term for your housing decision? Can you really afford to live in a hotel long term, or live in a rental property? At some point in time, there's a point of diminishing returns on that as well, right? So from an application perspective or service, if it's only going to be something you provide for 1 to 2 years, maybe that's something that's cloud play. It's commodity. You don't really need to worry about who's doing your expense management, for example, as opposed to something that's core to your business, like your ERP, that may or may not be ready for a software as a service play because of the customizations. That's something you likely want to keep on-prem, plus it's core to your business as well. So on an IT project, what's another common myth, or reality actually? How often does an IT project take, and how much does it cost?
Well, probably in the standard answer, 6 months on a $2 million or something.
Usually that's where the estimates come in.
That's T-shirt size it. That's the answer we always get. Why don't you just T-shirt size it? Don't worry, we won't hold you accountable to this later.
We won't give you requirements on the color T-shirt or the material.
No, but just give a high level. I'm not going to hold you to it though later.
Oh yeah, that's one that never happens. They
Never.
never hold us to those estimates, do they?
Never, but things actually take a lot longer. I think in a lot of IT projects, there's not actually enough time spent planning. I think people think you can just load an application and boom, it works. They're not considering all the different facets and all the different things that project can impact, right?
Right.
From costs, from your data center, from the network, from all the other different applications, the functionality within the environment, how users are going to use it from home, how vendors or partners or guests are going to come in and use that technology when they come in. All that comes into play. And there's a lot to consider nowadays. There's a lot of complexity, and that does add time and cost, right? So
Right.
really, you need to wrap a tighter scope around that type of stuff. What do you want to accomplish, and what is going to be your expectations of what the endpoint's going to be? Because it's not all the time going to be perfect right away. There's going to be grooming to it.
Not perfect.
Not perfect.
Flawless execution.
Flawless. Perfection.
Yeah, and I think this is where the industry's changing, is that, whole waterfall, moving to, having requirements nailed down before you even move into design, then you move into, execution and coding, or for our infrastructure project, standing up the associated infrastructure, is getting more towards a minimum viable product, right? Mm-hmm. Where you're expecting, you're gonna move faster, right? So you can get something out there that people can have, look and see how it works, and then provide continuous feedback in order to improve it over time. But to your point, there's still an expectation, even with a minimum viable product, that it's going to work flawlessly to a certain extent.
Well, and the interesting thing is, I think you make a good point, because I kind of associate that with my cell phone, right? All the apps that I've got laid out on my phone, on my smartphone, how many different updates do you get continuously on those applications, right? Now it tracks them. So it's every day, very consistently, there's updates for this, updates for that. So they got a product out, and now they're making adjustments based on user feedback that you look from the comments and everything. They know it's not perfect, and that app isn't going to be perfect. It's going to be good, or it'll accomplish a goal. But man, you're getting those updates on a continuous basis now.
True. Along those lines, with all the application and migration towards more software-defined everything, what's your take on just basic project management from agile versus waterfall? Do you think there's one that's better than the other?
I think it goes back to what we were talking about in some other topics. I think there's a use case probably for both. Just probably depends on your environment, what you're trying to accomplish. Your thoughts?
To your point, I think it just depends on the maturity of your organization to a certain extent, right? And maturity of your expectations, right? If you're going to go agile, doesn't mean everything's going to be perfect. Even if you're doing a 2-week sprint, if you're still treating it like a waterfall environment where you're expecting it to be perfect out the gate, I don't think it's going to work. So I think it comes down to a certain amount of trust that has to be there as well, to make sure that there are going to be mistakes. And as long as you're not making the same mistake over and over again, whether that's a software development project or infrastructure, you're learning from it. And I think that's one part, an element, whether you're doing waterfall, agile, or some other methodology, realize that people aren't trying to screw something up intentionally.
So you're saying really one size doesn't fit all?
Correct. So one of the other myths that comes up, at least with core and collaboration services, is with mobile device management. The device you need for synchronizing your calendar and your email and everything else, is that IT knows exactly what you are, where you are, who you're talking to, who you're texting, all of which are false, right? The MDA platform doesn't allow me to have that access, nor would I want to. I have a hard enough time keeping up with my own communications, let alone somebody else's. So it's just a service that we run into. Have you run into any of that with any of your services on the network side?
Well, I do. We run into that, but in my head when I think about it is, unfortunately, most people outside of myself and my family just aren't that interesting enough for me to actually pry into those types of things or even consider that type of stuff. So, we have access to the basic things, to protect the company, make sure people aren't doing things that they shouldn't be. Yeah, I just.
So do you have black tape over the camera on your laptop?
I do not. I personally don't. I'm
don't
really
either.
I'm not overly paranoid. I haven't purchased an old missile silo bunker and turned it into a condo either, but
I don't think
that's
anybody
just
wants
me.
to see that show because I haven't done P90X or anything lately, so I think we'll leave it there.
That's probably a good call.